if you smell what The Rock is cooking.
Acknowledge me.
You don't know what hard times are, Daddy.
We are bad to the bone. Get it? Bad to the bone.
Tell me when I'm telling lies.
I'll fight anybody. Who do you want? Just let me fight him.
Let me tell you something, Jim Ross.
Mega power, yeah.
We got it for you.
We are the best of the best.
Woo! Wheeling, dealing.
Smart marks.
And that's the bottom line, cause Stone Cold said so.
Yo, welcome back to another episode of Talk 'em in the Building, a pro wrestling podcast where we solely focus on the promo. We talk about the talkers, we hype the hype man, and of course we have to pontificate upon the promo. I'm Adrian. You already know it's no BS coming from me. I'm joined by the team, the homies. Out west, we got Out of Lead. And in my home state of Georgia, we have Greg. How are you guys feeling today?
Loving it, man. Enjoying the season, and there's a lot of great wrestling on TV. I actually been catching up.
Nice.
Dude, just trying to like Ali said, trying to stay up with all this wrestling is crazy. I mean, it's crazy. But hey, I mean, with the internet and recap shows and everything like that, it helps. But
Yeah.
They definitely help.
if it wasn't for social media, I don't know that I'd know what was even happening.
Right, exactly.
Shout out the recap channels and the Instagram pages, because man.
Definitely. If this is your first time checking us out, like I said before, we talk about the promos. We break them down. We try to have some in-depth conversations about the promo. We're not here to do recaps. We're not here to speculate and do the dirt sheets and all that. We leave that to those other guys, and some of them do a great job at it, and we're not here for that. We're just here to talk about the promo. In today's episode, gentlemen, I'm excited to talk about it. Is an underrated element of the promo, in my opinion. And it's the reason why I brought it up as a subject. And that's production and the evolution of production within pro wrestling on television. So before I got a couple clips that I want to talk about and get you all's opinions on how they have affected the promo game and professional wrestling as a whole, both positive and negatively in some cases, you can even say. But before we get into that, I got some questions for y'all, man. So, Greg, let's talk about it, man. What actually inspired the idea of this episode was at the beginning of the year, Raw, obviously, or WWE moves away from Vince McMahon, and right along with him, his longtime head producer, Kevin Dunn. Kevin Dunn is a very polarizing, I would say a very polarizing figure in professional wrestling. It's been a lot of negative comments about him, but we got to keep it real. He did help in a lot of cases of the business, and that's the reason why I'm directing it towards you, because you do look at that aspect heavily. What are your thoughts on Kevin Dunn and his impact on WWE's production?
I mean, not just impact on WWE, impact on sports in general. He changed the game. I mean, whether it was camera angles, whether it was evolving with society. I mean, go back to WrestleMania 1, 2, 3 and watch how it changed. Watch how the lighting changed. Watch how it became a bigger thing. And the pieces they paid attention to, how we lit the crowd, the blue cage. Everybody talked about the blue cage. The blue cage was there for TV. Don't get it twisted. It was there because it was easier to see through. It had a certain color to it. The ring, everything they did, he paid attention to. And I think that was a huge piece of what made WWE stand out during that time frame. Because you turn on NWA, it was gritty. You turned on the UWF or Mid-South, very gritty, kind of old school. The ring in the middle just lit up. And WWE just changed it. And as you watch, others followed. NFL followed.
Right.
I mean, Kevin Dunn had influence on XFL too. So go back to the original XFL. A lot of those camera angles got adopted later on into the NFL.
That's a fact.
And I think the one thing with him is he got stuck,
Mm,
as anybody does. It doesn't matter
definitely.
what profession you're in, you kind of hit a ceiling. And I think there's a part where you just kind of get to the point where you stay. And we all wanted something different. But
Hmm.
in my opinion, and I know we're not talking about Hall of Fame, Kevin Dunn should be in the Hall of Fame.
I
Kevin
agree.
Dunn should be in there from a just he changed how we watch wrestling.
I agree. I definitely agree. Now, Ali, my question to you is, when it comes to Kevin Dunn and the production, like I said before, it's a lot of today's wrestling fans or those of us in our generation um, who had a lot of negativity toward Kevin Dunn, and that's understandable. When it comes to if someone's around for 2 decades,
Yep.
basically, you're doing the same thing, and we get bored with you. We get bored rather quickly, but in this case, 2 decades is a pretty long time. But I want to know, man, when it comes to this new era of production, what's something that stands out to you when it comes to execution?
Well, I'm gonna take the baton from Greg over here because it's a good jumping off point to know your past to be able to create the future, right? And for me, something that I see is just WWE was always good at production packages. I mean, we all like. I hear Limp Bizkit and I'm like, Rock in Rock Austin, like
Spoiler alert.
it's just there, right? Um, but there's a generation, like you said, that grew up on that, and more than that, they have production experience. So for me, if I had to like choose one aspect of that experience, is just being bringing other disciplines that weren't part of wrestling in the sense that we think of now, especially in the social media market where there's videos that are just created for content, just to put online. They will never see TV or if it's a cutaway. But we got to go back to NXT, right? We got to go at NXT at Full Sail because you had kids that were doing production, learning
Yes.
that piece from the graphics, from the cameras, from the angles.
Right.
At the helm of who? Triple H,
Right.
who's now basically incubated. He found his own footing of sorts
Mm-hmm.
to say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. And you started seeing things getting discounted, right? We had these huge leaps from, like Greg said, the old dusty, smoky spotlight era
Mm-hmm.
to the smoke filled for because it was fireworks era of the attitude era. And now it's getting a little more refined. I'd even dare say it's gotten stylized
Mm.
depending on the promo. You look at a Lucha Underground, a lot borrowed. It only ran for a few seasons. The influence is still there. I mean, there's a whole MLW offshoot of it at some point.
Right.
But for me, it's learning and taking, right? I think the downfall for Dunn was it was that insulation, right?
Mm.
This is what we do. This is what we've done best. And yeah, more power to you because clearly you're at the top. But you have to look at different disciplines. You have to look at different avenues. And I think that's what's cool about this era. It's like we're not stuck in one thing. It
Right.
feels like we're more open to different styles. And sorry, going back to the Lucha Underground piece, if you watch those first episodes,
Mm-hmm.
they're weird, they're awkward. The lighting's there, the production values are there, the set design is there,
Right.
but they were shooting with people who were used to shooting boxing.
Right.
And until they actually said, hey, we shoot wrestling a little different than this, and plus we're shooting a TV show
Right.
for dramatic effect,
Right.
you start seeing that shift about midway through the season, or maybe even by the second season.
Mm-hmm.
So even those things are so important, knowing the camera work. But again, for me, it's, hey, we're living in an era where it feels like everybody has a say. There's so many companies out there, and everybody seems to have a unique look. We were talking about the past of Oshay Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Started watching that. That's it's a local, it's an indie, it's super well produced, but it
Mm-hmm.
has a very unique look,
Definitely.
right?
Definitely. And it's just an awesome thing. Like, I can't say it enough. We're living in probably the best time to be a fan. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's literally so many options out there, and it's always insane to me to see people just hang on. I hate this company, or I hate this promotion, or I want them to fail. it's so many different options, but that's a whole nother podcast, whole different conversation. Before I bring the clips, I have a couple quick hits. I want to get your ideas going or whatnot, get the thing flowing, and talk about a few elements of television production that have elevated the game of pro wrestling. I want to get your opinion. So, Adali, I'm going to start with you. When we're talking about entrances, you got to start off with a bang. For me, as an Attitude Era kid, the Titantron explosions, that was new to me, that was fresh to me, that got my attention. I want to know, what are your thoughts on the evolution of pro wrestling entrances, and if you got any examples that may be relevant to the conversation?
Well, I mean, you really got to throw it back. Michael PSAs, right? King of the thing. I mean, had his hand in, to this day, has his hand in so much of what wrestling looks like today, down to the entrance, down to the attitude. So for me, I was that kid. I was that kid that was probably, you know, in high school or late middle school.
Heck
I
yeah.
would try to pretend to do every entrance. I was doing the Jericho. I was doing this, the Triple H and whatnot. But that's what it is, right? The evolution of the entrance is still, to this day, is still rooted in individuality.
Definitely.
That's the beautiful thing about it, is those first 5 seconds of your theme song, which we can get into that whole, you know, era of theme songs. But this whole idea of within 5 or 10 seconds in pro wrestling, you basically know who is coming through that curtain or through that stage. And I think that's something that we appreciate a lot more now. And it's evolved to have this much higher relevance, much more higher importance for the pro wrestler individually. Because like you said, we're of a certain age. I dare say most of the main roster is probably closer to our age, the veterans at least. And you better believe, for those that are worth their salt, they thought about carefully their entrance. I can think of someone that I've seen evolve and go back and forth is Finn Balor.
Okay.
Someone who's, even when he wasn't in WWE, he was very thoughtful. In New Japan, he knew for special events, it was something. So it depends also on your, how it's interesting how it's evolved to where we think of your standard entrance, but also your special events entrance, right? I'm going to wear something different. I'm going to have, and that's become such a, now it's we take it for granted, but you look at the last Manias, they all have a different entrance for the most part.
Right.
It's like, okay, we're going to get to the main song and everything, but that's an evolution because it's not the same entrance every time. And I think that's really cool. Cody coming out in motocross, I don't know about that, but anyway.
That was pretty random. Greg, speaking of entrances, that's another reason why I really want to have this conversation. One of the coolest aspects of the new WWE production is the drone shot. I think that's one of the coolest things. I always tease that's such a flex that you can have a drone and it'll show literally every corner of a sold out arena. And it's just one of those things that does pump you up. And as a consumer, it kind of makes you say, when they're in town, I want to be in that crowd. I want to be in that crowd. But that's on the positive end. But on the negative end of production, you got to talk about those, those 3D images. It was always wonky, and you could tell that WWE was trying to figure it out. Like, it worked for some superstars, it didn't work for some. So it's one of those things where you get positive and negative. And on the AEW's end, the Cody entrance for me on a simple production standpoint was so cool, because you had the good guys walking through one tunnel, the bad guys walking through the other. But in the center there, they would raise it and look in a way where he's standing over you in the smoke with the light. And then the music hits, making me as a consumer say, he's a big deal. No matter what, he's a big deal and I need to be paying attention to him. So I say all that to ask you, Greg, what are your opinion? What are your opinions when it comes to the entrance in pro wrestling?
So I think the entrance, especially today, should establish your character.
Okay.
And it's hard, and here's why. It's harder to establish a character today than back 30 years ago. Because back then you had your enhancement talent. You had your people who you could get into a ring, you could have a 3, 4, 5 minute match against a guy. You could showcase your finisher, which was a finisher. You could showcase your talent. You could showcase if you're a heel or a face. You could kind of get your personality out there. It's harder to do that today because now, unless you get into that promo or unless you get into that ring, you don't have a chance to do a lot of that. So now you need to use that entrance and hope that I can connect with people somehow during this entrance through my music.
Yeah.
Think about Penta. Penta immediately was presented as a star. Why? His entrance. That first entrance showed everybody who didn't know who he was.
Right.
And let's don't get it twisted. 90% of the WWE audience did not know who he was.
That's accurate.
They were like, he's a big deal. And I think that's where the entrance piece comes in. I think where these guys are blessed today is if you ever go back and watch some of these old documentaries, Hunter was extremely invested in his entrances in WrestleMania. And that's why he always had over the top. And if you ever hear him talk about it, he said, because I was invested and I was back there and they allowed me to do it because I was always back there.
Right.
So he understands the importance of that. And I think that's a big piece. It's hilarious that Ali took Michael PSA's one of my favorites of all time, my personal Mount Rushmore of fandom, because the Freebirds were different.
Yeah.
And if you go back to what they did in their entrance, they had music that at the time nobody had. They also had matching gear, but all different. Michael had more of a robe. Bam Bam had a vest. Buddy had a jacket. They all matched, but they were different.
Yeah.
And what did that show? That showed a different personality of each one. And I think that's the other parts. When you start looking at through the evolution, it's T-shirts. It's, do I show my brand? Am I presented as a star? Do I carry myself as a star? The entrance is a huge piece. You see people who come out and they just walk out and you're like, go to an independent, watch how they come out.
Definitely.
Do they high five? I mean, it's like at an independent, if I high five, I'm a good guy.
Right.
Do I walk out and don't high five? I'm a bad guy. You have to establish that. And I think the big challenge today, too much of the music across the board, AEW, WWE, TNA, sounds too similar. You don't have that glass break moment.
Right.
You don't have the bell. You don't have the car crash. You don't have the screeching. There's two different things. There's a car crash for Mick. There's a screeching for Razor.
Right.
There's a diesel truck. You don't have these certain things that people pop off of. Can you dig it, sucker? You don't have that. That's where if you listen to some of these talents, and I listened to Austin Theory talk about it, the reason he has A-Town Down is because that's his glass break moment. And that's what he said point blank. I want a glass break moment. I want you to know who it is walking out the door. That's
a great point because that never happens in independent wrestling. Like everyone's music literally sounds the same damn near. It's not unique enough.
Or it's copyrighted.
Right. Speaking of copyright, great segue, gentlemen. Ali, we're going to talk about music because it's a few things. It's a few little conversations that can be had when it comes to professional wrestling and its use of music. On the WWE and currently, there's a company, Death Rebel. They get a lot of heat with WWE fans. And Greg pretty much summed up the reason why is because everything kind of sounds the same with them, So I want to know, what are your thoughts with them? But also, what are your thoughts with Tony Khan investing in licensed music? Sometimes, in some cases, over-investing. And shout out to Paul Heyman for giving everyone licensed music without paying anybody and just saying whatever. So I want to know, what are your thoughts when it comes to music and the evolution of that in pro wrestling?
He would argue it's circumstantial, it's background music, it's ambiance.
Right.
That's how he got around the lawyers, I think. So the evolution of music, I mean, again, not to go back to Michael PSAs, but I mean, you got to, because that's really the first time it was popularized for the, I'm sure everybody was using some song to identify themselves. That's I always talk about my dad watching boxing lucha at the Grand Olympic, but even you go to boxing and, the big thing on Cinco de Mayo, you're going to come out to a Mexican song. You're going to come out to a mariachi, a Vicente Fernandez, So there is some signature songs, but in wrestling, I'll go back to my earlier point, is those 5 seconds, those first 5 are so crucial in identifying who you are, identifying the kind of character you are, and ultimately whether we are invested in you as a cool guy, a cool character, a bad character, a goofy character. And I think that evolution has served its purpose, but also we can't have this conversation without mentioning Jim Johnston, who effectively wrote what the soundtrack, at least to my wrestling youth.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of. I'll play a playlist of pro wrestling theme songs or whatever once in a while, and I'm like, 80% of these are Jim Johnston songs, and the ones that aren't are like licensed songs, like Enter Sandman or something.
Right.
Which, going back now, connecting that to Tony Khan again, here's someone who's has far more money than any of us will ever see in our lives. But he can buy, a Journey song for Daniel Bryan, even though he probably doesn't care about that song more than once, in perpetuity too. And that's the unique thing, is WWE won't do that investment, because then, they're going to charge WWE prices, not AEW prices. And there's a grand disparity there. I think it's interesting and a little funny that even the wrestlers look to each other sometimes, because all the songs sound so generic right now. So, it's a product of business ultimately. If we look really deeply into like these contracts, the CFOs had a great contract. I think they were co-owners on these songs. But now something that I'm noticing is, I wonder if there's a shift, because we've crossed the hurdle of pro wrestlers coming from the indies into a bigger company and keeping their name.
Right.
What's to say, hey, can you just license, or I'm going to develop a relationship. I'm going to bring my own written song, Cody, Zack Ryder, right? All by the same band, basically. And going down that entrepreneurial path, so that you do not just own your name, your IP, your production, your color, your design. Danhausen has copyrighted paint. Why not just bring your own song?
Right.
And I think that's going to be the shift to now keeping yourself identifiable, whether you stay in one company or you move or you shift back and forth.
Nice. Great point. Listeners, comment down below. What's your favorite entrance theme? It doesn't matter what company. Let us know. Let us know down below. What's your favorite theme? I'm interested to hear your opinion. Now, Greg, before we get into these clips, I got one more element, and I want your opinion on this because you're our resident historian. In-ring action. That's an element of pro wrestling and its production that has elevated in some places. And you got positives as well as negatives. All of the major companies have tried certain things. The things that work, we see it quite often. And the things that didn't work, we don't see it as often, My best example, or my personal favorite in this element of production, and for some odd reason, we don't see it as much. When WWE, back when I was a kid growing up, when they did the overhead shot of the ring, and the reason why I remember this, I gotta plug Bret Hart. I got to. WrestleMania 10, Bret Hart versus Owen. There were points of that match where they did a shot overhead of the entire ring. and it really gave them the opportunity to really see them working. But at the same point, you got to see certain things of Brett pointing at him like, "Hey, you little that sort of." It was a cool angle. And on the negative end, you got things like, or I'm not even going to say negative. It's probably room to grow. But you got the cameras that are in the turnbuckle. Like I know AEW tried doing that a couple times, but just as much with WWE, which is a good idea, but the execution wasn't quite there. The ref camera. On paper, that's a great idea. On paper, the turnbuckle camera is a great idea, but the execution wasn't there. But also, it's pro wrestling. I don't know why didn't those work, and that's why I wanted to ask you, why are those not? Why those two examples? Why didn't they quite land?
So I think the one thing about the turnbuckle one, it's I'm gonna relate it to the NFL for a second. They've tried so many camera angles, but we all want to go back to the side, the 50-yard line view. We all want to see it from here. We've seen behind, we've seen the Madden view. That's what I always call it. But we always want to go back to that because we can see that's what we're used to and all of that. I think the ones in the corners, it's a cool aspect for replays, for a different angle. But I don't think it's a cool aspect for viewing. However, now with the advent, if you know what Cosm is, the big sports bar concept that's in Dallas and maybe in LA.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, hell
they
yeah.
have special cameras in those corners, inside the cages and all that kind of stuff to make you feel like you're there. So now they're using that camera for a different reason.
Right.
And every once in a while, you'll see a wrestler talk to that camera. And if you jump onto Cosm's social media, you'll see they're talking to them.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
That's cool. Yeah.
Now, but I don't think we want to see a match from that perspective. But I like seeing angles from that perspective, like a replay. Same thing. And the ref cam, they've tried that years ago too. I think it's just something that it just doesn't connect. And I don't know what it is. It's kind of like the old helmet cams. It just doesn't connect. Now I'm going to jump to what you talked about with Owen and Brett. Now, I'm not I like Brett. I was never a big Owen fan, not because of in-ring. It has nothing to do with their in-ring.
Yeah.
I didn't like him for the reasons I'm supposed to not like him. But that worked for their match because of how good they are. The problem is we're not watching a real fight. So if I show you that view, I'm going to see the misses, and I'm going to see
we're on the same page.
No contacts.
Yep.
The magic of what Kevin Dunn was good at, as opposed to a WCW, because WCW used, going back to Ali's point earlier, with the boxing cameramen, they used NBA cameramen, they used other people that Turner had. They know how to shoot these angles.
Right.
Let me get to this part where you're not going to see a missed kick. You're not, and they also know how to click it quick, right? They see, that's not going to connect. Boom! All of a sudden, you won't see that replay, but you'll see a different angle.
Yep.
Now, when I see that replay, I'm like, I know you missed that person by 3 feet, but now it looks like you killed him. That overhead angle is going to expose all of that.
And I'm glad that see, that shows we're on the same page, because that's the reason why I asked you that particular question when it came to the ref camera as well as the turnbuckle. It just seemed way too close to the guys. Like you're gonna see communication. You're gonna see it just doesn't work for what you're ultimately trying to prove. But yeah, I'm glad that we're on the same page with that. But let's go ahead and get into this first clip, gentlemen. The first element that I want to highlight in the evolution of pro wrestling is the backstage interview. Now, growing up, there was studio wrestling, right? We have Gordon Sully, we would have any of countless legends interviewing a wrestler before a match, or more so after a match. They cut their promo, keep it moving. Of course, we had Mean Gene, the legend Mean Gene, in front of the blue WWF logo is legendary. That's where some of our most favorite promos came from, you know? But the evolution, a part that I thoroughly enjoyed, was the backstage, more intimate, sometimes off-site segment. And we can say back in the 80s, they did this. They did this in segments, very special segments, trying to get an emotional look at the wrestler. But it's something about the Attitude Era with this element that was an evolution, in my opinion, of pro wrestling. And a couple segments to highlight. Pillman's Got a Gun. That was off-site. And that was memorable. It was amazing. Stone Cold on his ranch, healing from his neck injury, being pissed as I don't know what. And the common bond between those two in particular, and this one that I'm bringing you tonight, is the legend Jim Ross. He brought both of those home, as well as this one, an emotional look at Mankind. And it's one of my favorite segments. It's one of my favorite promos. And it's a perfect execution within the evolution of pro wrestling.
I'm not ashamed. I wish him and a lot of the WWF superstars nothing but personal trauma and tragedy in their personal and professional lives. Does that make me a bad person? I want the suffering
That is
on
the right
other
question.
side, and I'd like to cause it, because that to me is nice.
Have you ever been treated, or have you ever been diagnosed with a multiple personality disorder?
You know, I thought we talked about this when I said I don't believe in doctors. I believe in the body's ability to heal itself. If there's something wrong with my mind, I think I'd be the first one to know.
Don't you think that it's about time in your life where you looked squarely in the mirror and accepted the personal responsibility for who you are? Don't you believe that you yourself have caused and brought on all these problems?
I think it's time for you to maybe start doing your damn job. I think it's time for you to end this facade of journalistic integrity. You know what you tell the people week in and week out? You say, look at Mankind. I don't even know if he feels pain, or maybe he likes pain. You see, you're a powerful man, Jimmy. You have got the ability to reach a lot of people, to spread the truth, and you neglect to do it. Let me ask you a couple of questions.
Look at JR.
What is it about pain that I love? You see, I feel just like every other person. You see that? It hurts. Is it when I can't get up? When my little boy says, Daddy, I want to play ball, and I can't do it? Is that where the fun starts? Is it where a doctor injects a 12-inch needle into the discs in my spine so I can wrestle one more day? Whoopee! Let the party begin. I can't believe you sit here and ask me those questions. Do I bring it on to myself? I haven't done a damn thing to you. All you've done to people is mislead them and let them think that I'm having the time of my God.
Such a good touch.
When I'm in pain. Don't you look at me with that smug look. You make me sick. A man of integrity. I want to smack you. I can't.
about you guys, but if I was JR, as soon as I wake up, I'm fighting the cameraman. Because instead of helping me, you choose to zoom in.
Mm-hmm.
But no, that's a legendary segment. I still remember being a kid watching that and being freaked out, like, man, this dude just went crazy. So out of league, man, we've had the episode on Mick Foley. It was a terrific episode. Listeners, if you didn't check it out, go back, listen to it. We explained to you why Mick Foley should be in your Mount Rushmore. Ali, give us some insight and thoughts on this, because I know you were marking out just like I was.
Oh man, it's been a minute. It brought me back, because again, I think about that time, and let's be real, there were so many throwaway segments and promos and just filler, really.
Absolutely.
And man, I would have loved, here's where like, oh, your family would walk in and judge it or make fun of it. Like, I would have loved to have them walk in on this, because this is an award-winning performance, right? I mean, if we're looking at him as a performer of an art form on television, there's still some camp there. Let's just call it what it is.
Absolutely.
He is playing a certain character, but it's played out so perfectly, and for JR to just play the straight man through and through, right? He goes back and forth between, staying within character, but also, the 12-inch needle in the back so I can survive one more day. Completely rooted in his own truth. I mean, his first book is all about how many surgeries he's had and how much pain and suffering he goes through. And, love Mick, have met Mick in person, went to one of his comedy shows, one of my, wrestling heroes. But the man really did give up his basically his health for the pro wrestling business. And for me, that this promo encapsulates that in a way that maybe not everybody really knew at the time, especially anybody who was even just getting back into it, and knowing that, he was going to be now one of the stalwarts of that era, right?
Definitely.
Right up there with an Austin, right up there with Rock. And it was the pro wrestling, obviously, but it was moments like this where the production knew exactly how they wanted to focus in, right? So many pan-up shots to create this reveal, right? So many close-up shots, even down to the end where the action is just so chaotic that even the camera flips and everything, right? But it's played straight. It's it's like a it's a two-shot camera. They're sitting on these cheap leather couches or seats,
right?
And then they
it's
got
shot like a Barbara Walters interview,
something like that. Real honest, real honest, and trying to get who he is, but just so true to the character that we would now know, right? This someone who is struggling with this violence within. And I love the, Foley ever being the wordsmith is kind of my favorite thing about this promo. But down to the lines like your facade of journalistic integrity, and then he just rips into JR. But that's when he turns it, right? Because up until then, JR is just, he or I'm gonna take the insult. I'll ask you a new question,
right?
And that's how they keep. That's the structure of the promo essentially. But from a production point of view, it's seen because obviously they knew the end point. So.
Definitely.
Kudos. It makes me miss, something as simple as this, seemingly, but something that could have been way overproduced, and it wasn't.
Easily. Greg, let's talk about JR, because I'll be honest, man, JR brought that thing home. Like he was a straight man. He was doing his job, got attacked, and I just love the let's talk about JR. Being a WCW kid growing up, did you ever see like JR getting involved in any angles or a wrestler putting their hands on them? Because I don't quite remember that.
No, definitely not WCW. If anything, the only time I can think of where he had conflicts would have been in Mid-South.
Okay.
But not in WCW. He's much more the straight-laced guy and just called matches. Much more Gordon Soley-esque. Like,
right.
in WWE, much more storyteller. but I preferred him in WCW just from I enjoy that style of commentary, but I understand why he did what he had to do in WWE. Like he had
Definitely.
to progress stories, right? I would tell you one thing that's hilarious. I remember being at the studio for WCW,
Okay.
and he was announcing. And so at one point there was Chi-Town Heat. So Starrcade was Chi-Town Heat.
Okay.
A few years later, you had Chi-Town Rumble, and he called it the wrong thing, and he was pissed. He was sending it because they used to do live to tape, right? So I remember him saying, "And we'll see you right after this Sunday at Chi-Town Heat." And he came off of it. And he goes, "Fuck!" There in front of the whole studio. He was so mad at himself, and it was just so funny. I just remember that. But I'm gonna flip something about what you just said. How
please.
he played this straight. Looking through this promo through a 2025 lens. Foley was a sympathetic character.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
And JR was smug, and JR was talking down to him.
Even to the point of calling him to be accountable for 100%. A lot of things.
You should be accountable. Do you have a personality disorder? Think about that in today's world. If you put that on that Barbara Walters, as you kind of paralleled it, or a type of show, CNN, MSNBC, whatever, and they said that to somebody, holy crap, people would lose their minds. And so now you look at it through that lens. He played his part well for what it was, but there's a part of me, I'm like, even though I knew what was going to happen, trying to separate that a little bit, I'm like, attack this dude. The way he just talked to you, he just discounted your career at WCW. He just discounted what you've done in Japan. He just said, why are you here? Why are you comparing yourself to Shawn Michaels? I mean, all of that. He basically downed him the whole way. And I'm like, yeah, get him. You know what I mean? And so, but there were some subtleties in that. JR smug, playing a certain role, again, 20 years ago, whatever, however long it was. But there was some things that Foley did when JR's talking to him about being Cactus Jack and about being, have different personalities. He's sitting there, and if you watch, he's rubbing a scar.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The whole time. He's just looking at him, and he's rubbing that scar like, this scar, right? I mean, it's like, I've earned this.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's those subtleties. And then, sorry to jump onto one other thing that you brought up earlier.
By all means, please.
You talked about Kevin Dunn. You talked about Vince. And this is kind of the evolution of pro wrestling. This, to me, was the promo that took WWE up. Okay. We talk about Tyson. We talk about Austin and all this. This changed WWE. They acknowledged Cactus Jack, which they never used to do.
That's a good point. Very good point.
They showed footage of barbed wire from Japan, ECW stuff, all that kind of Terry Funk things. They acknowledged the past that was never something they did. And especially as bluntly as they did. And they brought in the real life part of Mick Foley, where they tapped into the dude love. You had that tease of the dude love.
Right.
I want it to be Shawn Michaels. They acknowledged Cactus Jack. Why didn't Cactus Jack come here? And even that whole part of, now I'm attacking Vince McMahon, that was different too.
Right.
And it was just kind of like that whole piece right there was just rooted in so much realism. And I have to give credit to a Kevin Dunn who helped, who produced that package, I'm sure.
For sure.
Or, oversaw it. A Vince who greenlit it to do this type of thing. A JR who brought it together in the Mean Gene type of style, right? Where he was that conduit that brought it. But Foley, dude, and I've heard this because we know these are TV shows.
Right.
That's Emmy-winning performance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hands down. Absolutely.
Ridiculous. We talk about cinematic today.
Yeah.
Please. If that term was around then, that was cinematic.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And great segue, because the next element of the evolution of the pro wrestling promo deals with the cinematic segments. Now I'm thinking about these guys that were shot like movies. Essentially, it wasn't pro wrestling. It was essentially, like they say on the internet, pure cinema. And my favorite example, I'm just gonna show you guys. I'm not gonna segue it or anything. I'm just gonna show y'all.
Oh.
Brother Nero, I knew you'd come.
That's it.
That's it. That's it.
Oh,
Dude, no, this was hands down the reason why I was locked into Impact Wrestling around that time. That character was my app. I mean, that whole saga, the story, all of the players, like it was just like good night. Like Jeremy Borash, this is the reason why he's worked for WWE now.
Oh, yeah.
He's still employed with them off the laurels of that whole segment. But Greg, I want to know your opinion of the Broken Hardys and just the genius of just who gives a crap. I'm gonna go ahead and go put out this weird character and who knows? You know, like let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Broken Hardys.
I mean, it's not just that production.
Mm-hmm.
We just talked about how Foley went real. Hardy made it real.
Mm.
He took a character, and it didn't matter where he showed up, what he did. He was in that character during that TNA run or
Absolutely,
Impact run.
absolutely.
And I think that's why it didn't work as well in WWE, because he had to dance that public appearance as Matt Hardy as opposed to Woken Matt Hardy. And I think that's why it worked. And then same thing with Jeff. And the whole family, everybody bought in.
Everybody was
and it was so over the top and so crazy that it was like must see TV.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was one of the greatest podcasts I've ever heard in my life is the one he did with, I think it was Chris Jericho.
Mm.
And he did the entire thing.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
Chris tried to get him out of it, and he would never come out of it. And it was like, holy crap. Like the whole thing. And he was so invested, whether it was on social media, whether it was on Impact. We got to give Dixie and Impact credit for allowing them to go down this route,
Absolutely,
do these different things, to try something totally different. Bischoff always talks about different than, less than, or same as, right? This was so different that it put TNA on the map.
It did.
When I say on the map, during that time frame, they were suffering, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It was the talk of the wrestling industry, to the point that you and I were sitting at a party of the Hardys, and they had a line out of this world to meet their freaking kid.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
Along with Reby, along with
Senior
the yard
Benjamin.
dude.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm like, what in the world? There's a line for these dudes, not just Jeff and Matt. And it's like they had the entire world loving them.
Right before their surprise at WrestleMania.
Yes.
In Orlando. That was
to the
crazy.
loudest pop I've ever heard in my life.
Hands down. Now, out of lead, man, I want to talk about Matt Hardy, because I know when we're talking about the Hardy brothers, and when you talk to most wrestling fans, a lot of people are going to be like, man, Jeff Hardy was this, Jeff Hardy was that. Dude, Matt Hardy is very underrated. And I honestly think we should do an episode on Matt Hardy and the genius of Matt Hardy, because he's gotten so many different gimmicks over. So let's talk about Matt Hardy. I want to know your opinion and your thoughts on Matt Hardy.
Man, I was right there with you, reliving WrestleMania 33, and just, I mean, I wasn't there, but I heard on TV, and that was incredible. But again, a testament to the character he built, and then brought his brother with him. Because as much as we left Jeff Hardy, you know, once he had that shot in WWE, he really became as one-dimensional as you could be. He's like, okay, I'm the high flyer, you know, I'm an artist, you know, and we loved them for it. You know, we liked them for at least for that aspect of it. But here comes Matt, who, again, I don't know how many boundaries he could push because he was always seen as that number two to Jeff's number one. But you see that creativity come out, and to Greg's point, it's that possibility of him trying things out, because we're talking about production today too, and not to get too much. All those ideas were basically his, right? The drone shots, even the night shots where they're by the lake, and and just all that whole segment with the fire. That's all in my mind, and I don't know what his process is like. But to me, that had to be storyboarded. That had to be visualized. You had to, you had to frame shots. You had to do setup on it, change shots, change angles, because there's tons of angles, right? So for me, that also speaks to him being a student of the game backstage as well, who I'm sure is one of those people who I don't know who this generation is going to be, who sees wrestling for far more than just what happens inside the ring, right? And I think that is the highest compliment I can give anyone of that next generation. Is the next generation is in great hands,
right?
Because of someone that understands the value of production, just like he did. Because ultimately, I mean, they're rebranding themselves, right?
Absolutely.
You just talked about his father-in-law. That was my favorite part of the gimmick for a long time.
Absolutely. It was
because
hilarious.
It was so wild and so absurd that, I'm going to start this new character with my brother, and you guys are going to follow along, and we're going to have catchphrases,
right?
And I'm going to bring my father-in-law, and it's going to work,
right?
And it did.
And he was Senior Benjamin was so
my
goddamn over with the rest
and
of
he's hilarious. Like, just the timing and the way they cut that. So for me, it's for him. I can just say, I'm so curious what he does in the future, if he's ever given an opportunity to operate more on the behind the scenes aspect.
Definitely.
Can I jump in on one thing with this?
Yeah, please.
I have to put him on a pedestal along with one other person, and I'll tell you why. There's only a couple up on this pedestal. We talk privately, and we all have our opinions of a Osprey Ricochet match and all these other things, right? And we never down the athleticism, but it's not my cup of tea. I have a very hard time suspending disbelief watching all this stuff. But I'll be damned if I can't suspend disbelief watching this, right?
That's it.
And this is over the top craziness that puts him at a pedestal that we all as wrestling fans go, okay, yeah, I know it's not real, but damn, I'm invested.
That's it.
And the only other person I can think of that did this on a regular basis is Taker.
Now
Bray, I can put on a separate level.
Yeah.
But beyond that, who else has the most ridiculous, crazy stuff that you like? This is must see. I'm invested.
Right.
Like, I got to see what he's coming up with next. And that was the talk of the industry. And when I say that about Taker, because he was supernatural person and he was the dead man and the lightning and all these other things, we were all invested. We knew it wasn't real, but we didn't care.
No question about it.
We didn't care. And it's so funny that we as IWC, and we are part of it, have a hard time suspending disbelief on some of these things. Like an Osprey Ricochet match. Some of us do, some of us don't, whatever. But, and as great as that is, as far as athleticism and all of that, we can complain about that, but you don't hear the complaints about this type of stuff because of how freaking good he is.
Right.
And he puts himself on a different pedestal, man.
Well, we're on the topic, so I'm going to give you two more that I think belong in the conversation. If we're talking about creatives, and especially now we're kind of leaning towards maybe a little bit of tag team action here, right?
Okay.
And it'll be of this era, because who are the other creatives that the Hardys wrestled that nobody thought that would be their last match before WWE? It was the Young Bucks, right? The Young Bucks literally made an empire happen on a YouTube show with creativity, with an extreme following, extremely passionate following that ended up following them to AEW. And the other one is Adrian literally has the shirt on, the New Day.
Yep.
I mean, for very different reasons than the Hardys, obviously, and through Matt's kind of like baby over there. But I mean, we didn't have to like these goofy guys. Yet we bought in, even when they were in champs, even if it was just an appearance, right? That same WrestleMania that we just talked about, the return on, they're the hosts of the whole thing.
Right.
Didn't even wrestle.
That's a great point. Great point. Well, before we move on, I want to shout out V1 Matt Hardy. And I also want to shout out Money Matt Hardy, because that ROH Hardy was hilarious. Hilarious. So shout out to Matt Hardy and his genius, and hopefully more and more people give him his flowers.
Yeah.
But we're down to our last clip, gentlemen, when it comes to the evolution of production within pro wrestling. And for this one, I would say this was a perfect marriage. We've talked about licensed music. We've talked about memorable feuds, memorable characters, legendary characters. But in the instance where it was just a perfect marriage, to the point where we mentioned it earlier in this podcast without you even knowing that I'm going to bring it. This was, in my opinion, a perfect marriage in professional wrestling.
Woo!
Legendary segment. It just brings back those nostalgia vibes and feels of being a kid, being super excited for WrestleMania, being super excited for this match. Perfect soundtrack. Out of lead, please.
Oh my gosh, this is like tearing my heartstrings. This is my youth. I'm gonna put on my lugs, call my mama 1-800 collect.
Facts.
I'm gonna open up my bag of Doritos 3D and pop open a Surge, because this is a life.
Nice.
A life of no worries. My parents are paying everything. I'm watching pro wrestling. What else is there to complain about? You know, and then that Monday night, it's like the best like Monday at school of all time, right? So for me, that is just nostalgia defined. That's, if you could put it in a pill, I take it every day, you know. But that aside, from a production value, if you look at it now, anybody that talks about production, right? We look at this promo because it highlighted everything perfectly. And then I'll say a small note. These promos, especially at Mania or pre-Mania, would always serve a purpose to catching up anybody that was just coming in with a quick shot. You don't need to know not much. Just know, hey, these guys are beefing. It's about to go down, because y'all already know who these guys are.
Right.
We're just setting up the story for them. But they're stars. These guys are at the top of the industry. These guys are cultural icons, you know, we think of nowadays. But for us, we didn't have to wait for society to tell us that they were cultural icons. We knew it, right?
That's a fact.
Maybe we didn't know Rock was going to be a global, you know, actor and whatnot, but that didn't surprise me, right? I just tell you that much. So I love it. I love the cuts are awesome. You know, I want to shout out the editors, because it's such a thankless job to be sitting there in a dark room in your computer and just.
Absolutely.
So shout out to Adrian, our editor here. But yeah, just the use of the music and the timing of it, and just that face off at the end where, you know, they're doing the salute with the beers, and it's like, no, we respect each other, but we're all hell is gonna break loose now.
Absolutely.
And it gets you so hyped up for the match. They're like, and these guys are gonna wrestle again in front of thousands of people. That's insane. So I think production work goes hand in hand with what you see on the screen, and with that level of hype at the time, this promo, this editing, this package matched the hype and then some, because it has staying power.
Absolutely. Now, Greg, the name of this podcast is Talk 'em in the Building. I think that promo package is the pinnacle of a big match. It gave you that big match feel. And I think any and every, like we always talk, especially around WrestleMania time or All In or All Out or Double or Nothing, you get a couple gems, you get a couple good promos that they're cooking. But this one's they're firing on all cylinders, man. I want to know your opinion on this segment.
So I think the cool thing about this was it treated them both as equals. It also did not distinguish who's good or bad. And it went in the face of traditional pro wrestling that I'm going to kick your butt. No, it was all about the title.
Yeah.
And it was all about, we do have mutual respect because of how they played everything. And even what they said to each other was still mutual respect. But it was like, I'm coming after that title and I need that title. I need to beat you.
Right.
But it was like not screaming and yelling, not the traditional thing. And totally would talk somebody in the building because I think the key was they knew we have such big stars here. We can't make one look less than.
Yeah.
Especially at that time.
And let's don't get it twisted. Some big egos.
Yeah.
It's sitting right there. And I think that it was so good. I mean, the video production, the timing of the music, I mean, everything that they did was just so good and foreshadow what was to come. Because you really think about how the production of video packages happen going forward. And Adelie, you made a great point of how this is leading into Mania. And it's leading into their Super Bowl where the casuals come out and the ones who aren't following each and every week. You can watch that video package and you're like, I'm in.
Right.
Like these two, I gotta see.
Yeah.
Because you probably knew even if you're casual, you knew who The Rock was. You knew who Stone Cold was.
Especially that time. Yeah.
But
that time.
You may not know why or whatever, but they told that story in a very small time frame that you need to come watch this.
Definitely.
And it would suck you right in. I mean, that right there, you talked about what would you show somebody leading into, who may just walk into the room. They could walk in and see that.
That's it.
If they could hear it, it would pass Adrian's strip club test too, because it's that type of video package that I'm like, oh wait, that's Rock, that's Stone Cold.
Right.
Oh man, hang on, I'll give you $1 in a second. All right, that's cool, right? So, and then you turn back around, and make it rain. But at the same time, it's like, all right, yeah, Mania is coming up, 17. All right, cool. I need to get jump back into WWE and find out what's going on. So fact, I think that's a hell of a package.
That's a fact, man. I just say I can't say enough about that segment, about that package. Like, it's just so memorable, man. It's like the bar. It literally sets the bar for me when it comes to promo packages. And it definitely talked multiple people in the building. So shout out to them. Now, before we head out of here, gentlemen, and I appreciate the conversation as always. Listeners, we appreciate you listening. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. There's some good conversations. Before we get out of here, I'm just going to throw this up here, and whoever wants to take it, take it. What are you looking for in the next evolution of production in pro wrestling?
I'll jump in and just say,
go ahead.
I love some of the things they're doing today. They've taken aspects of the social media, and I'll use WNBA. WNBA is awesome about this. That it's a fashion show walking in. It's what are you wearing? It's the fit. It's here's Angel Reese coming. Here's Caitlin Clark coming. Here's Brittany Griner. What are they wearing? What are they doing? And so now WWE's done that. Now they're walking in the building.
Yeah.
I just don't want them to overuse it. That's what makes me very nervous. There for a while, we were like, man, they're following Jay from here all the way through. It's one camera shot. Right. Awesome. We can't do this every week. But if you want to do it with Jay, I'm kind of cool with it because that kind of became his thing.
Right.
But I don't want you following Cody. I don't want you following Roman. I don't want you following every single person. And I think we need to get a little bit of identity there. I like that.
Okay.
I really want a better production from a musical standpoint.
Yeah.
Something more distinct for the wrestlers.
Okay.
Because I just go back to my childhood. When
Yeah.
Warrior came out, you knew it. When Hogan came out, you knew it. When Piper
Right.
came out, you knew it. When Razor came out, Shawn, Brett, they all had that distinct hit right in the beginning. And right now, there are people who come out. I'm like, I have no earthly idea.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, even Penta. I mean, you get that Seto Meadow, but beyond that, I mean, Joe Hendry. I think he's got it. You got, there's certain ones. Roman did a good job with how they did his,
Mm-hmm.
but there's just certain ones I don't know who it is, especially these
Mm.
NXT kids coming up.
Mm.
But I like the creativity. I love the fact they tried the ref cam. I love
Yeah.
that they try the drone. Sometimes the drone drives
Yeah.
me a little bit crazy. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, oh geez.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I like them trying different stuff.
That's the thing about being innovation. Like you're not gonna hit a home run every time, man.
Mm-mm.
And to Greg's point, he mentioned something about finding an identity, and that's where I was going to kind of chime in on that. Is you can lean into certain elements a little too hard, like the
Right.
drone shots, like following on a one shot. But if you look like at an AEW right now, they've had to go into small arenas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think something to take of that is you're also a product of circumstance, of what's available to you.
Right.
So they'll use these unique buildings, theaters, whatnot that they're in, and have these special entrances. I think I just saw Moxley and his crew did one literally from the entrance of like the whole venue, because it was a small venue,
Right.
and then they come inside, and they've done it multiple times with different people, and it just gives it this fresh look that embraces where they are right now, rather than ignore it and say like, okay, we're gonna block things out and make the arena or this 2,000 person arena into
You
a
embrace
5,000.
Embrace it.
Yeah, like, hey, we're not lying. And some of these places are beautiful. Like literally, I think one of them, it looked like the crowd was almost like on top of them.
Right.
It was so structured that way. So I think more of that, because to Greg's point, from a production point of view, I want to see stages come back, man. Like,
yeah,
I get it. They want to simplify their production and travel probably and not deal with so many elements, but that was such a cool part, growing up. Like, even like you think back to classic entrance, it's like the classic Raw is War setup, the SmackDown, right? The original one with just the circular Titantron. And that was a thing. You were watching Raw and SmackDown, and you were watching two completely different setups, right? And I thought that also gave it its own identity, because I was watching UPNs like, okay, I'm not just watching a repackaged version of Raw that just they changed the ropes on, because that's if there's one pet peeve for me, it was that one growing up. It's like, okay, now we're on Metal or on Jacked or on whatever it was at this time, Heat, and all we did just change the ring apron, and we're gonna put on these terrible matches. Well, no, some of them were actually bangers, but they weren't bangers by design, I should say.
Right.
I think one thing that I look at, and I'm sure some people think, why are we talking about this? Because part of the promo is every piece of this.
Absolutely.
The promo is that entrance.
Yeah.
One of the things I think AEW could take a note from is how WCW did their entrances.
Okay.
Bischoff was well aware WWE was the Kleenex, right? They were the brand. So what did you see on every single entrance? A huge metal WCW logo.
Man, that's right.
And because that way you knew I'm watching WCW.
Mm.
And if I was Tony, I would have an AEW logo. And I would also look at my stage, to your point, Adelide, and think, man, what if when I come to Atlanta, I make it look Atlanta-ish?
Mm.
And if I do have half this arena blocked off, move my stage from the end zone 2 to 50, put it on that side, I can still shoot the same way, or I can put my hard camera over there if I want to. I could do all kinds of different stuff, but embrace it to where it doesn't look like it's empty. I just have something over there. That's my big stage. WWE does it right now, whether people know it or not. They have a big, all of a sudden one week they have a huge Raw stage, the next week it's smaller.
Right.
Why? they had the big one because they didn't sell those tickets. If it sells out fast enough, they open up more tickets. They shrink that stage.
Mm.
They're doing it with pay-per-views too. So just look at it from a different perspective, and I would just love to see it be more distinct. Like an AEW, I know what I'm watching, but I'm talking about for the casuals. If they turn on an AEW, they're, oh, what is AEW? You know, see it right there in your face.
Mhm.
Ali, to your point, I would love to see almost like a totally different production crew for SmackDown than Raw. Like just have a whole totally different feel. I think they're doing a better job with it than they have in the past.
Mhm.
But I would just like to see something totally different.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, gentlemen, like I said before, I appreciate the conversation. I knew each of you would bring some great insight on production because that's something that I'm a big nerd of. That's one thing when it comes to film, music videos, any of that stuff, I'm paying attention to it. I'm paying attention to production, and I I think it's really underrated as a cool piece to put some promo over the top to get some people excited and essentially talk them in the building. So I appreciate y'all for having that conversation, man. Listeners, once again, this is Talk 'em in the Building. You can check us out intothebuilding.com. That will give you a quick link to our YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. As always, check the backlog. We've had some great conversations where we focus on certain wrestlers, promotions, whole bunch of stuff. Check it out, and run the views up because that's what we like to see. And shout out to any subscribers, any new subscribers. Thank you for joining the team. But for Adrian, Greg, out of lead, we're talking pod. Y'all enjoy your week, and I'm gonna give you a Kevin Dunn shaky camera type deal to end the pod. So shout out to y'all, man. Thanks for checking us out.